good afternoon, and welcome to Church Connect. This is County's monthly programme to encourage and to inspire church leaders and churches all across the UK in how they serve the Lord and use the gifts and abilities and their influence for Him in a way which will bring change, the change of the gospel to our nation. So particularly today I want to be thinking about, I have a question really for us all to reflect on and to think about. And this question is simply this: what is God stirring in your heart? What is God stirring in your heart? You know, we are living in unusual times. And this COVID-19 pandemic has pushed us into a different place to what we could possibly have imagined 6 months, certainly 12 months ago. And I think it's stirring something within each of us and within us as a nation, within the whole world. And I believe that God is perhaps stirring things in our hearts. And we need to listen to what He's saying to us. And so one of the people, I'm sure, if you're like me and you read your Bible regularly, I take a great deal of encouragement and inspiration from is the story of Esther in the Old Testament. An amazing story, how Esther, this beautiful young lady, was pulled into the palace and became queen of the nation, won a beauty contest, and clearly was beautiful on the outside but also beautiful on the inside. She had an uncle who loved her and brought her up as his own child, and she was there in the palace, but things were going on around her, and laws were being made and passed which were ungodly and were actually detrimental to the work of God across that nation and the world at the time. And so it came to a point where her uncle made a request for her to do something, to step into this space and to make a request to the king to change the course of history. And understandably she was reluctant, because if the king that day didn't like the look of you and didn't fancy your request, you know, it could literally mean off with your head. And understandably she was very reticent. But Mordecai said these words and sent a message to her. And a very famous verse in Esther chapter 4, and in the New Living Translation, the back end of verse 14, he says, "Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this." Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for just such a time as this. And even though she was reticent, she actually took the challenge and realized that God had placed her in a position of influence for such a time as this. And I don't know where you are. I don't know where you are in terms of your stage of life. You could be at that exciting stage. You just come out of university or college or school, and you know, kind of the world's at your feet and your oyster, and you know, where is God going to deploy me? You could be in the middle of a really busy schedule of work life. You could be looking towards retirement. I don't know where you are, but I just ask you this question: what is God stirring? Maybe even through other people, just prompting you to reflect on. God's put you where you are, perhaps, maybe just for such a time as this. And so as you reflect on that question, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine called Terry Wilkes. And Terry Wilkes was approaching retirement several years ago. And he had all sorts of great plans. And he found that actually God had placed him where he lives in Wolverhampton for such a time as this. And God changed his plans, but he wouldn't have wanted it anything different. So let's just let me introduce you to Terry and hear something of his story and how God has been working in and through his life there in Wolverhampton. Yeah, now we're really thrilled that you've been able to join us. So where are you joining me from?
Okay, well, I actually live in a little village called Wombourne, which is very close to Wolverhampton. But our church is located in an area called Finchfield in Wolverhampton.
Right, I can hear a little bit of the Wolverhampton twang coming through.
Well, I can give you the real thing if you want it, but you may not like it.
I can understand this one, so I'll stick with this one.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's great. So Terry, just tell us a little bit about your journey, because you've planted a church there the Windmill Church, but most people tend to, when they get to sort of retirement age of life, tend to sort of want to take things easier. And planting a church, I doubt if it's on many people's agenda. It should be, but it's not. So what happened when you got near retirement? How did you come to plant a church?
Well, first of all, Tim, the journey started 40 years ago, and I was 32 then. And my wife and I felt a need to come close to the Lord, and we knelt down together and gave our lives to Christ. So that's where the journey started. Bringing that up to date, obviously I've served in various churches over the years, but not really leading a church. And I had an experience. I went out to Colombia into the danger zones to encourage persecuted Christians. And very briefly, I saw something in those believers. They'd lost everything. There were 36 pastors murdered, actually, when I went over there.
Wow.
And yet they just got such amazing faith. Even in their trials, they were still witnessing to the Lord and bringing people to Christ. And coming from a very comfortable English background, I found that a real challenge. In fact, I cried for 2 weeks afterwards with the emotion of it. And I was then coming up close to retirement, 65. I'd had a very busy life in business, and really I'd planned all these wonderful things that you do in retirement. But the Lord had a different objective for me, and I just had this amazing burden for people in the west part of Wolverhampton, and I just felt I had to do something about it. So
Wow.
retirement never happened, but it's been an amazing journey that we've been on. So you retired,
and then, of course, as you say, this journey continued. And how did you actually get involved in actually planting a church? I mean, most people, I don't think, would even think about that. So you wanted to serve the Lord in that area of Wolverhampton, and you had that burning heart for.
Well, I think, to be totally honest about it, I resisted it for a while. Because I knew the cost of church leadership, and it wasn't something at 65 I wanted to rush into, but the vision just grew and grew, and it became something I had to do something about. So very simply, I just didn't want to take really Christians from other churches. I didn't feel that was right. And there was just one other couple that we met, and they were not in a church at the time. And we just started. We got some help from Andy Hodson and the Church Planting Initiative in terms of how to go about it. And we set ourselves up and hired a youth centre and put a sign outside and got in there praying, Lord, please send people to us. And do you know what happened, Tim? Nothing.
Not many turned up, probably.
nobody came. And we kept praying. And then one day I just felt the Lord saying, Jesus went out into the world to meet people. So I walked out the youth centre door, met a man walking his dog, and he's still our oldest member of our congregation now. So
wow.
We just drew people in. And I suppose really, I mean, my wife and I, we have two lovely daughters and grandchildren. So we've always been a very close family. And what has happened, Tim, it's almost as if the family has just expanded.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord has added to our numbers. And we've seen new converts. And the church now, it's only a small building we've got, incidentally. It was a redundant Anglican church. And our members gave £80,000 to buy it. But I mean, there's a big story behind that. But that's the building. We're bothered about people, but we need a building to meet in. But it has been an amazing witness, and the church only holds 60 people, and just prior to coronavirus we were 4, so we couldn't. We were almost turned away. So when I had the calling, it was to plant 3 churches, and I never really shared it with many people because I didn't want to sound boastful. But there was the second area was an area called Compton, which is not far from where we are. And I had a meeting with the local councillors, and we brought them into our coffee hub. And basically, they were over the moon with what we were doing. And we said, well, we'd like to do another one. And they mentioned that they got a redundant youth club in Compton. And Compton was the place where the Lord gave me 8 years ago to plant. So it just dropped in my lap, really.
Wow.
So currently, and I just want to encourage others, because it has been hard work. I wouldn't want to say it hasn't.
It sounds familiar.
And it's more than a full-time job in retirement, so that gives you an idea of it. But I'm 73 now, and I've got
really
other leaders who are grasping the vision, and the whole congregation is behind it. And we're about to take on this building that the local authority are going to give us on a long lease at
wow.
at £1 a year. And
That's amazing, that.
And what we've done when we've gone into these areas, we've circulated a newsletter. So in other words, we've not gone into a new area and said, look, this is what you need, this is what you want. I mean, our vision is for evangelism. It is based on friendship evangelism, where we reach out to people where they are, and we send a newsletter around and saying, here we are, this is who we are, what would you like in your community? And it's been amazing on this new project, which we hope to start the end of this year, how people have warmed to us being a church. Wow. It's amazing. That many are non-Christians, but they've just sort of related to us, and of course, as we get to know them in all the different things, we'll start a coffee hub and various other activities, but we'll be there to share the love of Christ, and not to hide that. We'll be there to bring the gospel into the place where these people are, and it's very much going out into the community and reaching people. So the Lord has been wonderful to us, and it's been a very exciting journey, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is, people are open to the gospel. And I think often we tend to feel that no one's interested, when actually, if they can see it in action in a practical way, like you've shown in your community, which is essentially the love of God, who would not want the love of God in their lives?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, what we're doing at the moment, we've actually linked in with other organisations like the local community association, and we've linked in with the voluntary sector council in Wolverhampton. So Windmill Community Church is the only church in the city that is part of the social prescribing network. And basically what we're doing is just reaching out in the COVID virus and saying, look, we're here to befriend you, and if you would like prayer, we will come and pray with you. And it's just amazing. It's but what's lovely about that is we're getting all the church members involved, the ones that are able to do it. And as I speak now, people are phoning people in the community who have no church connection. And we're getting some wonderful feedback. I mean,
brilliant.
So praise God. All glory to Jesus Christ.
Exactly. And churches are closing, and we're seeing empty buildings. And I think during this time of COVID and lockdown, quite a number of churches probably won't reopen in the future. But of course, you've demonstrated, as if we needed any demonstration of it. We've seen it in our church in Cinderford, that actually just because a building closes for a season doesn't mean to say that God can't reinvigorate it, and it can't be replanted, and new life can come.
Yeah.
And like the windmill, and possibly other places too.
Yeah, I think the lesson we've learned, Tim, is we have to do it Jesus' way.
Yes.
And if we go out and spread the good news and make disciples and really meet people where they are, because we're not going to drag them into church. They won't. We found they won't come. But if we just relate to them where they are, and they see us just as ordinary people, but people who found this amazing love of God in their lives and this new birth and new life, then they want it, because that is true Christianity rather than churchianity. And that's what people want, really. But we've seen some amazing conversions. It's just been wonderful. I mean, one lady, for example, was just wandering the street. She'd lost her husband, and we just found out she was just wandering around. We brought her into our coffee hub to start, and we've loved her and cared for her. And now she's a member of the church, and her whole life has been turned around by just giving her Christian love and care, So it's been great, very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, no wonder your local council love you. You're probably saving them thousands, if not millions.
Well, it's not just me. I've got a whole, the whole body now has got the vision, and is almost, I'm stepping back in a way, because I'm allowing others to take it forward. The thing is, we find with church planting, and you must find the same, you're always under-resourced, and you have to work with whoever God sends to you. And that sometimes takes time to nurture them and to bring them forward and to discern where their gifting is. But if you get all the ducks in the right place, it seems to work, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always feel that God sends us what we need. And often you look around and you think you don't have what you need, but actually it's there somewhere. It's just you've got to unearth it and unpack it. Yeah, and we can sort of see the glass half empty. We can feel all the things we haven't got. But actually, let's just focus on what we have got. Let's develop the gift, the talent, the relationships, see what God does. And it's he never ceases to surprise us and amaze us, does he?
Yeah, I think I would encourage people, because, I gave up retirement, but I've gained such wonderful riches in my walk with the Lord, really. And that's heaven stuff, isn't it? It's everlasting when you're helping people and leading them to Christ, so that's been wonderful.
Yeah. No, well, thanks for sharing that, Terry. Really appreciate your time, and excited by what God's done, what he's doing, and what he's about to do.
Thank you.
So we'll watch this space with great interest, and I'm sure many people who are watching today will be prayerfully supporting you and watching with interest as well. Well, what a story, what an interview. How fantastic just to hear from Terry. Thank you, Terry. So encouraging. And so often we resist God's stirrings in our hearts, don't we? He's as you're listening to that interview, you're feeling something burning within you, and you're aware that God's given you a passion, a heart, perhaps like for a particular place, a particular mission, and you're kind of resisting. And like Terry, you're thinking, well, I've got to give up so many things. But I love that line that Terry said, I gave up retirement, but I gained heaven's riches. I gave up retirement, but I gained heaven's riches. And let me just encourage you, if that's you and you're kind of resisting the pull of God on your life, and you're thinking, how can I possibly give up all this? Well, actually, how can you not? And because it's, you want to gain heaven's riches. You don't want to just have the trappings of this world, which are so fragile and so temporary and so unsatisfactory. You want heaven's riches. So let me encourage you, if God, what is God stirring in your heart? Has he put a burden on your heart, perhaps even to get involved in church planting or to be a part of a team? And if you're like me, I was like that 20 years ago. I didn't realize that's what God was stirring at the time. It was just some sense of He's stirring something. And as I wrestled with it, I realized that actually my heart was, I was wanting to see the church win, but all I'd seen in my life was churches go up and down, up and down. This sort of roller coaster of a period of thriving and things seem to be going well, and then suddenly crash and burn. Or just churches unwilling to take the risk because they didn't want to see the roller coasters. They just were on that maintenance mode, or managed decline. And that didn't excite me. We want to see something happen, don't we? And it was only when I saw people like Terry and how God had got a hold of them and they took a risk and they just took God at His word, and they've seen churches start to grow and churches start to thrive and people come to faith, like that lady walking the streets, and lives being changed. And suddenly it made me think, do you know what? Actually, I think we can win at this. I think, at the end of the day, Jesus said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. We're actually pushing on an open door here. And so, every generation has to do, like Terry said to us, we have to meet people where they are at. And every generation, that means we do that in a slightly different way. And that's often why churches get stuck and why they're managing decline, because they're doing it in a way that was relevant and culturally right 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. But actually today our culture's moved on and we're in a different place. The gospel doesn't change, the message doesn't change, but how we reach people, where we meet people, where they're at, is in a different place. So let me encourage you, if God's stirring something within you, don't just sort of go, I can't do that, I'm giving up too much. Think about what you're losing, and maybe you want to be God's stirring something fantastic in your heart, and just go for it. Get involved and roll up your sleeves, whatever stage of life you're at, and I can guarantee you will not regret it. You really won't. And you'll be thrilled as God uses you in ways beyond what you can imagine. So we're going to look at another story from Clive Cornish. Those of you who are familiar with counties will know Clive, the man who walked around Wales and beyond with his cross. And God had been stirring something in his heart, and something which he'd been wanting to get involved in for about 20 odd years. And finally, only a few months ago, he was starting to be able to move into what God was stirred in his heart. So I caught up with Clive, so let's just dive in on the interview now. So Clive, just tell me, obviously those who are familiar with counties will know that you're a counties evangelist, known for carrying your cross everywhere. So what are you doing in a building site at the moment? What's all that about? I can't see your cross anywhere.
No. Well, it's a different way of carrying the cross, really. So in retrospect, we kind of are carrying the cross, but I'm actually in what was Ely Gospel Hall that closed down in December. And I've had my heart for this place for many, many years. We moved to Ely, actually, to this area 23 years ago with the vision of planting a church. But this place actually closed in December. And I'd asked to then, there was only 7 then in fellowship, but they were trying to keep the place going. And I'd asked for the keys, but wisely, they gave the keys back to organisation Western Counties. So I approached Western Counties, but the member or the leader had actually given my name to Western Counties and said that I was interested. And they ended up giving me the key, which I didn't think they would do. Fiona asked me, do you think I'm going to get the keys? And I said, Fee, there is no way that they're going to give me the keys to a building like that, but they did.
Well, that's good. That's I guess that 23 years of waiting has probably been partly preparing you as well as waiting for the Lord's timing and everything, isn't it?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy because we never lost heart and the belief that God wanted us to plant a church in Ely, because it's a very rough area. But quietly, my heart was in this place, and I don't know why that is. Quietly, my heart was for Ely Gospel Hall, and we did approach the hall on one occasion, but things just didn't work out. and we ended up here. So internally, in my spirit, I just know, because of the last 23 years, I'm not losing heart for this place because it's right on the main stream going through Ely. It is strategically, it couldn't be any better place, really. Right on the main drag. It's perfect.
Yeah. So what has been your main focus during lockdown?
Yeah, well, I was actually given the keys 1 week before lockdown, but it was, a godsend for me because it would have drove me nuts staying in the house, and it would have drove Fiona nuts as well. But I was able to crack on with things. I initially thought I was just going to use a bit of filler and some paint, but in the end, the whole place it's been totally rewired. It's got CCTV, new alarm system, having new toilets fitted, all of the walls, all of the ceiling. New kitchen, everything has been revamped because we want to use it for not just for spiritual reasons, if I can put it like that, but use it for the community too, to use that as a means of reaching them. So my time has been spent knocking down, rebuilding, getting rid of the rubbish. Just totally renovating the place, really, Tim.
Yeah. No, well, I can see just looking. You were showing me some pictures earlier on how it's changed since I was last down there. So that's fantastic, and it's a lot of hard work. And it's so actually the time has been well spent, hasn't it? And so, any idea when you're likely to finish? Do you think actually the building phase of things?
Well, I'm hoping to finish everything else except for the coffee shop because we're going to be putting a coffee shop in and we need planning permission for that. So that's an even more lengthier process because of COVID. I'm hoping January, February to have everything completed. But the 95% of support manually has come from non-Christians. It's been phenomenal, and it's blessed me, but also challenged me because they do want to give. One man gave. Well, he was made redundant at the beginning of COVID, and he worked 8 weeks solid, 5 days a week for free.
Wow.
It's incredible. And he's brilliant ideas. He built a new stage as well. That's incredible. Yeah, but amazing. So we've had one conversion as well.
No, that sounds really exciting, Clive. So I know you're part of the M4 process with Counties Planting Network, and you've had your first learning community with your team. How do you find it?
Well, going back just one step from that, I got to tell you that I wasn't happy about going on the M4. I wasn't. That's just me by nature. Like, I'm very suspicious of everything, and I don't like organisation. So I was very suspicious and negative about it. And I'm not saying this because it's you, Tim, because I'm really not. But after that Friday and Saturday, myself included, the whole team was very encouraged by that process, by the way it brought us. And I don't know how it did it, but it did. How it brought us together as a team and helped us focus on the way forward. I can't really tell you how it did that, but it did. And I was so encouraged, really encouraged. And the rest of the team as well. And a couple of them were a bit, unsure about things, especially with having to pay money to do it. I'm not happy with that, but it was well worth it. It was well worth it.
So, thanks ever so much, Clive, for joining us, and we'll continue to watch and prayerfully support you as things go forward. God bless you.
Appreciate that. Bless you, Tim.
Well, wasn't that great to hear from Clive? And I love that bit where he said his heart had been in this place for 23 years, and how fascinating how now is clearly just the right time, God's timing. And already they've seen one person become a Christian, and they're only just doing building work. It's how God works. And I want to just return to that initial question that I asked you right at the beginning. That is, what is God stirring in your heart? Maybe if you've seen these interviews, something has just ignited a fire within you, and you go, I want to be part of the action. And I feel God stirring me, and perhaps you're just holding back, you're resisting for all sorts of good and sensible reasons. But perhaps just like Esther, God's placed you in a place where you are, perhaps for such a time as this. So what is it? You know, we at Counties, we're already planting just 10 new churches in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Cardiff, right up north in Kendal, down south in Somerset, Ross-on-Wye, in the middle of the country. And God is doing a new thing. Some of these are in buildings like Clive's, which are buildings which are closed and are being relaunched. Others are in completely new places. And how about you? Maybe God's calling you to be part of a team, not necessarily a lead planter, but to be part of a team where you are, to actually plant something new and to bring the hope of the gospel to your community and to your area, or perhaps maybe even to move and to go somewhere where you can join a team or you can lead a team. And if God's stirring you, you know, we need people in Tewkesbury, in Surrey, in Cardiff, and Swindon, and Birmingham, places which are we've got opportunities and teams we're trying to pull together. So join us and be part of what God is doing at this key moment in our nation. Because if you're like me, you're sat here thinking there's one thing that our nation needs more now than ever, and that is to know and to hear the gospel and to be drawn to Jesus. And perhaps God's going to do what I did to Terry, and you're going to be giving up maybe your retirement, maybe something else, some other things which you've been really looking forward to doing for a while, but actually in return you're going to gain heaven's riches. I don't think that's a bad exchange. And how about just taking a deep breath and going for what God's calling you into? So if you're interested in being part of something that God is stirring and you want to talk more, please just drop me an email. I'll put the email address online. I'd love to talk to you and encourage you and hear your stories. So thanks for joining, and make sure you join on Monday morning at 8 o'clock when we have Life Connect each morning 8 o'clock, and then next month we're going to have our next Church Connect, and I hope you're encouraged as you go forward into this weekend. God bless you. See you soon.